Bulldog. This Bulldog is so bad. Oh. Oh, okay. Nice. Okay, I gotta text the boys. Okay. Yo, boys, Valo tonight. MSI just sent us their gaming laptop. Okay. I really like the fact he was so
Back out fresh on the scene, 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 back out fresh on the scene. Franchise best on the team, 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 franchise best on the team.
No, on your right. On your right, on your right.
My left.
Your left,
right.
Behind you.
Got one.
Okay, you shh. Keep playing, man.
Left.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna save late. Yeah, I have to
Got one.
Okay, done. I don't know when I'm gonna be home. Yeah, the four of us have been spending quite a few nights gaming in the studio, except that one of us usually stays at home when gaming altogether. The sad reality is that due to the shortage and outrageous prices of GPUs, I had to put my small ITX on the side for now. Exactly why we couldn't bring that fourth person in the studio to game with us. Listen, to be honest, when it comes to gaming, I think a gaming laptop could definitely be worth it. Believe me, aside from our own custom PCs, laptops are another device we use to play Valo and Rainbow Six on, which is why today I thought it would be awesome to bring the Stealth 15 on board of our minimal gaming setup and showcase how awesome this laptop has been for us. But let's quickly go back to the device itself. This year, MSI slightly changed the look of their new Stealth. For a gamer that mostly cares about performance, I know these changes are probably not that important to you, but it looks really nice and I personally prefer this design on their Alclad chassis. It is a fingerprint magnet though, which seems to be most laptops nowadays, so do keep that in mind. There's a bit of flex on the display casing, but it's nothing to be concerned about. The good part is that while gaming, whether you are raging by pressing the keys or not, it barely even wobbles at all. Quite happy about that considering that the main selling point of this device is how thin it is. I can definitely say that the hinges seem to be well calibrated. It's what you should expect from a thin aluminum clad chassis like this one. So when it's all closed down, it is about 18.2 millimeters thin, perfect for portability. It's impressive considering we have an RTX 3060 inside and decent ports. On the left, we have a power connector, one USB 3.2 Type A port, and a 3.5mm jack. As for the right, we have one Thunderbolt 4 port, which I am pretty happy to see, a simple 10GB per second USB-C port, next to a 3.2 Type A port and an HDMI connection. No Ethernet, which I personally think would have been nice to have. I personally have a bunch of devices connected to my network switch for better speeds. I did open this up though, and you really have to be careful if you are looking to upgrade a few things. The bottom cover is plastic, which is a bit sensitive. Upgrading the SSD is super easy, the Wi-Fi card as well, but when it comes to the RAM, you really need to flip this whole motherboard around, which means taking the battery off, removing fan connectors, and so on. I would have loved to have the RAM slots accessible at all times, but I guess due to the thinness, it was the only way this could fit with this 52 watt-hour battery. Like always, opening up the lid with one hand passes, and I've always said it, but I really like MSI's laptop keyboards. I love the functionality they bring with their function keys, and on this particular model, I do enjoy the additional side keys. Overall, they are nice and big, spacing between them is perfect, the font is a bit bigger than the previous gen, and the travel is exceptional, making the keys overall feel premium. So it does deliver a nice typing experience, which means that gaming on this keyboard is fantastic honestly. I did try to change the colors on the keyboard with the MSI Center app, but it doesn't seem to be a feature on this laptop. As for the trackpad, there honestly never seems to be a difference between some of the models I've reviewed. I've always felt like they are all quite small, but a great quality these have is that they are smooth, there isn't any weird material being used so your fingers glide super well, and tactile feedback feels really good, but I'm not sure if I like it better than the Razer laptop we have. All of this does sit below what I thought was a speaker grill. Turns out that it isn't. It's actually part of their thermals, which is an intake grill. Very different from their previous model. I must say I much rather this. I guess it explains the reasoning behind the motherboard placement design. The grill for the speakers does sit below the chassis on the plastic portion. This has a couple of 2-watt speakers and they sound mediocre. Nahimic does make it sound a lot better, but as a gamer, I honestly don't mind at all.
Supply box identified. Box located now.
Get out of here. Spike planted.
I personally need headphones to hear footsteps. The screen is very nice. Not as bright as I would have liked it to be, considering that MSI claims that it delivers 250 nits of brightness. However, this 144Hz screen marks the moment I realized how much of a disadvantage I was during gunfights. Everything is much smoother and clean with 144Hz, and so for me, going back to 60Hz is going to be a hassle. It does sit in this 15.6-inch IPS Full HD screen with nice slim bezels and untested, but I think we still get around 50% of the sRGB color gamut like last gen. It wouldn't be my first choice when creating content, mostly when we lack the SD card slot, which they seem to remove this year. The camera on top, it's really not that great at all, but I mean, just like any other gaming laptop out there, although honestly it just does the job when needed. But I really like the fact you have a kill switch for it. Now, let's just bring this to the setup to truly test its performance. This whole thing though is operated by an i7 1280p codenamed Alderlake, recently launched last month. With this new 14-core processor and an RTX 3060 Max-Q, we do get some nice gaming performance out of this thing. Keep in mind my model did come with 16GB of RAM and 512GB of storage, enough to store quite a few games and run some heavy processes all together. But the question is, does this 60-watt graphics card perform well? Well, after connecting all the peripherals necessary to get our late night gaming session going, I must say we were all quite happy with it. There were a few nights I wasn't there to game, but one of our friends used it and he really liked it. Keep in mind he was using it with an external monitor, so that's good to hear. I do find Windows 11 makes things feel a lot quicker. It is a bit of a pain when it comes to connecting dual monitors, but other than that, it works well. I kind of feel like Intel finally understood and gave this laptop 14 cores instead of 4 like on the previous model. Explains as to why the Cinebench R23 numbers have a massive difference in multi-core when comparing it to the i7 1100 375H. I guess 20 threads instead of 8 threads is a lot better. This processor really looks promising, honestly. The only thing that always bums me out about Windows laptops is that you need to plug them in and make sure your power mode is set to best performance. On most MSI laptops, the power button light is also an indicator of which graphics are in use. So when the power button lights up orange, it is using the Nvidia GPU by default instead of the Intel HD. So you know that when you are playing something like Warzone, your RTX 3060 is in fact being used. In our case, Warzone at the high settings yields great frames per second. In this game, frames per second is always all over the place when dropping from the plane, and the laptop handles it very well. I almost never experience drop in frames when dealing with gun battles, so I'm pretty happy with that. Like Warzone, Rainbow Six is another game that uses a mix of the CPU and GPU, but it tends to like to prioritize the graphics card. It's a game that I've played quite a bit with this laptop and it runs very well. We rarely experience stutters, frame drops when dealing with gun battles, and overall it's a very fun game to play on this machine. And keep in mind this was all running in high settings. When playing with the screen, the fans don't seem to kick in as much as I thought they would. I do have to say it gets hot towards the sides and it can be a bit uncomfortable. It's not the first gaming laptop where I've experienced this though. On dual monitors, all these games still perform well provided the lid is closed and the laptop is docked. It's how we prefer this laptop being used for the most part because when we play Valorant, we like having a bit more screen real estate. Turns out that this was the game that we spent the most time playing with the stealth. I couldn't get enough of it because this machine runs it like a champ. Out of all the laptops we have, we know for a fact this one was the best at running Valorant, which is a CPU intensive game. CPU wise, I really don't mind recommending this laptop at all. With maxed out graphics, things run super smooth and the frames are very stable, whether you are rocking it on the monitor or on the display itself. Just hear the sound of the fans after a couple of hours on Valorant. Surprisingly, a full charge took me about 2 hours. It does come at a cost though. That's the fact that it tends to die quickly from what I was able to test, and this thing can last anywhere from 2 to 5 hours depending on what you're doing, of course. The ports are fine and I can very much connect everything I need to it, but I like keeping things minimal and using the hub. It gets all my connections done and it very much works super well. I really like having this audio mixer here with the Audio Technicas so we can get some decent sound out of our games. I do have to admit, I was expecting to have that little MSI dongle for the Ethernet cable in the box. It's a must for us. Genuinely guys, we are quite happy with the device. We only had a few weeks with it, but from what I saw, it's something I recommend well worth checking out. I think it's going to be a very interesting year, considering that most of us are suffering to get GPUs. I think MSI did a very good job with this laptop this time around, considering the fact that it's so thin. Let me know down below what sort of laptop you're looking to get this year. I hope this helps so you can add this one to the list. I'm trying to stick with 2 videos a week, but it's not always possible. I need to stop playing Valorant guys, so I'm out.